Muy buenos dias. Good morning. Um, Hope everyone's having a great day today. Thank you for joining me. Um, let's give it a couple minutes, ask for like a couple seconds just to let people join. Thank you everyone that was expecting, that was waiting for us, both on the YouTube and on Emergent platform. Um, I've had planned to do this presentation in English, but if by any chance doing it in Spanish is better, please let me know. You can comment or ask questions, of course, on the chat and YouTube if you guys want. So yeah, let's give it just a few seconds and we will get started. Okay. Well, people will join in eventually. Again, good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. Um, my name is Jorge. I'm from Bogota, Colombia. I'm an audio branding specialist. I work for Sonic Minds. And today, what we're going to talk about is how can we use audio branding principles and frameworks in film and film music and sound. So the goal here is to illustrate a little bit what sonic branding really is. You know, there's a lot of noise out there, there's a lot of misconceptions. So the goal would be for us to really peel it off and really know what it is about sonic branding. And mainly, since we're in here on a film festival, the idea is to give directors, filmmakers, producers, everyone who's involved in filmmaking tools, you know, actual tools and methods that can be used to really translate, you know, all the ideas that you know, filmmakers have, all the vision into sound in order to, you know, enhance and really bring their project to the next level. So let's begin. So just a quick order of the day. First of all, we're going to talk about what really sonic branding really is. Then we're going to go a little bit behind the scenes of how is a sonic strategy is built, how it's done. We're working, you know, we're talking about audio branding. We're mainly talking about brands and products, but the principles we're going to see how can we apply them to film music and sound. Finally, we're going to do a quick workshop. I want to guide you guys through like how can we define the emotional DNA of a story. So we're going to get practical on this a little bit, and finally go to the questions and answers Yes, in the end, in case you guys have one. I encourage you to use the YouTube chat. That's where we're going to be able to see all the questions, and I'm going to be able to answer them. So let's roll. So first of all, okay, so Sonic Minds, who are we, right? So we're an award-winning agency. We're specialized in audio branding, strategy, and production. We're based in Copenhagen, in Denmark, but we have global reach. We're located everywhere in the world. We've worked with clients all over the world, and we've been kind of like 20 plus years in the market. So yeah, about me a little bit. My name is George, or Jorge, how you prefer. I'm an audio branding and business consultant specialist. I'm based in Bogota, Colombia. I lived in Brazil for 18 years, where I acquired background in musical composition and sound design. Right now, I'm working with audio branding, but I worked in game audio and composing for film in the past. You know, and what I'm doing right now, what I love to do is really spreading the word about audio branding, what it can do for people, what it can do for organizations, product projects, and whatnot. And I'm a full-time dad to a 6-year-old, and you know, I like to always be in touch with what's happening all around us. And you know, having this artistic side, it really helps to understand and help navigate some of the brands that we've worked here, some of our global brands that we at Sonic Minds have worked. You can identify me: Volvo, Maersk, perhaps Carlsberg Group, those who like some beer, Orsted and A-System as well. some of the brands that have trusted us in creating their sonic strategies. Okay, so now let's get to the nitty gritty. First of all, so what is really sonic branding? It's important to address this issue because maybe you guys are like me in the past. Like sonic branding, I associated a lot with like jingles, and maybe like a funny sentence or maybe a tone of voice that a brand used on a radio announcement or whatnot. But it's quite more complex than that. I want to show two quick examples of audio branding, and I want to just let you listen and see what you guys think. Okay, so this is an interesting example. I'm not going to touch too much on it right now, but I wanted you let's to analyze like what does it evoke, if it makes you feel something, if it evokes any memories, and this second example as well, especially since we're in a film festival. Okay, so get whatever this evoked you, whatever your mind, whatever images it came to mind with these two examples, and now compare it to this. So the exercise here is like when we listen to something, when we get immersed in something with through sound, does it have the same effect as if we're seeing something or only seeing something? In this case, I'm using brands like logos and stuff, but we can translate this to film, to trailers, to the like everything surrounding film. It's different when you see it, it's different when you hear it. So that's just a brief way to illustrate that sound branding is really all around us. The first example I showed with brands, these are sounds that we detect in our kitchen. These are sounds that we detect on our cell phones, on our homes, on our public transportation and hospitals, right? So really, sonic branding is all around us in every sense. So it's very important for us to understand this. It's not a jingle. It's not only an audio logo. It's the perception that we have of things through how they sound, right? So getting technical, what really is audio branding? So audio branding really is a strategic and creative discipline. This is important because sometimes we only see the subjectiveness when dealing with music and sound, but audio branding is different in the sense that there's a strategy behind it. There's intention, there's how to handle resources, in this case, creative resources and sound resource. Also, the goal of audio branding is to strengthen identity, create this recognition. People can evoke your well, in case of product, in case of a brand, or in case of a film, they listen to this 3-second chord or this intro or whatnot, as happened with The Godfather, with a lot of other soundtracks out there, the great ones. And this, of course, generates the connection. This generates people emotionally associate with this. This is why it's so powerful. Also, audio branding is, well, probably the main purpose is to create meaningful sound experiences, right? So what we're trying to do here is to convey meaning. It's not only about doing sounds because it's weird if we don't. It's about not like creating meaning and really driving something through every sound, every musical note that that happens. And in the end, it really is a powerful communication tool. Brands around the world are seeing it. In the world of film, it's something that has been, always has permeated this, where we're talking about leitmotifs and whatnot. I'm going to touch on this a little bit later. And why is it now the moment to talk about audio branding? For some of you, it might be something new. If you're especially like into filmmaking and directing and producing audiovisual material, probably you've heard of it, but why is it today that is so important for everybody to really start listening and start paying attention to this? Like some stats, first of all, sound triggers emotion in less than a second. So we actually feel, we actually listen, we process what we listen in the subconscious matter before we even think it rationally. So that's something that's really powerful, and not a lot of people know this. Maybe we know it like on our own being, we sense it, but we not necessarily think about it. Also, this is regarding audio logos. They increase 8 times the brand recall when combined with visuals. This is also important when talking about film, because when the two of them, the visual and the auditory, when they like really match, and it's like they 10x the meaning that a visual soul, a visual that only a visual can convey. You can just like remember the times of the mute film. It's a very different immersive experience, if you may. And also, this is important regarding audience, right? So Gen Z, the new generation that's coming over there, 75% they feel that music helps them connect emotionally with a brand, with a product, with even a project, right? So it's not something to be taken lightly when we're talking about sound and audio branding. And I asked this provocative question: with this data, with this, this small information, all these, the stats that we brought here, how do you approach music and sound in your productions? Whether you're creating content, whether you're a filmmaker, whether you're a producer, how do you approach it when you're dealing with sound and music? Perhaps you leave it till the end. Perhaps it's something's an afterthought. Just a provocative question. Okay, so far so good, guys. How are we going? How are we holding up? We're kind of 20 minutes in. Just remembering you guys, if you have any questions, pop it up in the chat. We'll be able to address them ASAP. Okay, so moving on. We kind of established what sound branding really is. We saw how it's like all around us, how it affects us, right? How it can cognitively, it's a very powerful tool, and not a lot of people are using it. So now let's go behind the scenes of a sonic strategy. So we know what it is. So like, how do we do it, right? So first of all, we have to understand the psychology of sound, right? Because otherwise we're just dealing with subjectiveness. Otherwise we're just dealing with probably taste, personal taste. And as I said in the beginning, when we're dealing with strategy, with sound and strategy, it's different, right? So when we're talking about the psychology of sound, well, the sound, as we saw, it generates the faster recall. As we said, in less than 1 second, we can react to something, whether it's an alarm, whether it's a tune, whether it's a voice of someone that we love and care about. They call us, and we react immediately to that voice, even if we don't know what they're saying, right? So it's a faster recall. Also, it establishes our emotional state. So this is something, if we talk about film, right? So the music itself probably is the most powerful tool for a director to establish whether a scene or a sequence is more nostalgic, emotional, or maybe more angry, or a lot of action. So it really establishes the emotional state. It's like a trigger, right? And finally, the cognitive unloading. This is something that really happens, or we really perceive it, especially like in apps, or even an example that I like to bring from a colleague of mine is when we're in a car, right? And you put the turning lights. So that's cognitive unloading on the driver. It's telling the driver, you have this thing turned on, and we're going to keep playing this tick, 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 tick until it turns off, right? So it is a cognitive unloading. And if we talk about like apps, or like positive or negative feedbacks in case of a video game, for example, when you do a correct action or do a wrong action, that feedback, sound feedback, is really cognitive unloading. It transmits functionality, not only meaning, which is personally I found very interesting. And okay, so having seen how the sound plays in our psychology, there's also the sensory translation, right? So here we're talking something a little bit more profound. So we're talking about archetypes, forms and symbols that we have, that we as a society, we as human beings, we share this common knowledge, common beliefs. And how do we perceive these archetypes? We do them through our senses, right? We know something is warm because it feels warm. And yet we can say, oh, this song feels so warm, so cozy, for example. Or on the other end, like we can say, oh, this sounds happy, or this feels tender or feels sharp. So it all comes to how we translate our sensory perception eventually to sound, right? So how does a sharp feeling, like tactile feeling, translates to sound? How does a dark color translate to sound? So we have here some examples. We can be as literal as winter and beach, for example. So it can be as literal as that. So we're healing the winter, the wind, the loneliness, perhaps you could say. And on the contrary, we're healing the waves, the life, the seagulls and whatnot. So that's like a literal translation, if you may, from the visual to the sensory. But it can also be subjective in this way, like this example. So here we're not talking directly like the literal, how does a flower or how does beauty sound, and how does chaos and trash sound. We're translating that into how we perceive it. We're translating it into sound. And it also can be not necessarily subjective or literal, but it can be functional, right? For example, here. No, it's not your computer. It always gets me, the example. I always think it's my computer. But you see, there's a difference between like the functionality of something that worked or is correct, or something that's an error or incorrect, right? And finally, this is like the whole origin of like the leitmotifs, right? Leitmotifs are, musically speaking, are like this small musical fragments that are associated with a character or a section of the story or a mood, especially characters. And for example, right? So we can have the difference between one leitmotif for a character and one leitmotif for another one. So you see how we translate this. We see how the Lord of the Rings tune is appropriate, makes sense, it's coherent, right? It recalls, it brings us recall. we feel like, okay, this is something in the fields. It is something that it has the flutes. It's nature, right? On the other hand, something very heavy, or maybe an armor, maybe darkness, maybe. So it's not as subjective, perhaps, as we may think through sensory translation. Okay, so I want to guide you very quickly on how the identity process, how the sonic strategy process really works, right? So it's kind of a three-step process. First of all is the all like the preparation, research, and the brief and the concept, right? We're trying to distill the brand, the project, the vision, the values into key attributes, into words. We're going to talk about it a little bit in a few seconds. Then we're in the production phase, right? So with the brief, with all the directions, with all the instruction, with all the wants, the needs, the don't wants, and the don't needs, we start doing the audio production. We build the assets, we build audio logo, the brand, music, everything that's of course required according to the project. And this is done through iterations, right? So we meet, we get together with the client, we discuss the first drafts, we go deeper into what works and what not. And finally, the implementation process, right? So it's not only about having the sounds, it's about implementing them in a very smart and strategic way, right? As we said, this is a strategic craft. This is not only creating sounds because of the sake of it. So it's really important, our advisory in case needed, or guidelines or whatnots, to make the implementation as smooth and effective as possible. This is where testing also comes in. Very interesting that maybe when you talk about audio branding, you wouldn't think it exists, but it does. We can test. So just going a little bit through the process, right? The first one, the strategic, the concept, what we're doing here, the audio brief. We do this through the workshops, as I said, right? So what are we trying to do here is we're trying to dig in, do the research, extract the insights, the necessary insights for us to understand, who the target audience is, who the competitors are, who is doing the same thing that you are doing at the same time, and how can you differentiate through audio. The touch points, of course, when we're talking about brands, you have apps, you have billboards, you have ads on TV and whatnots. When we're talking about film, it's not so different, right? You have to promote the film, you have to do teasers, trailers, whatnots, and it's also part of the sound identity of the film, right? The sound identity does not live only inside the film, right? Since it's the identity, it actually shows. So it's like an external shell as well. That's something to have in mind. We do the sonic workshops too. So this is where we bring examples, we bring some reference, we try to really define and peel off to discover really the essence of what the brand or the project or the product would sound like. So we explore spectrums. I'm going to talk about it in the workshop in a bit. We develop the vocabulary. We're going to try to describe sound quality, something that's common for everybody that's involved, all stakeholders on the project. And of course, we have to discuss the brand visuals, or the product visuals, or the vision that somebody has, and how can it really communicate and dialogue very well and enhance the final experience with sound. And well, in the end, we do the auto strategy and the concept presentation, right? So with everything that we've gathered, we present a strategy. This is how we're going to work. It's not about delivering, it's about implementing. And this is the stage where the brief comes out, right? So this is where we have everything in text, all the references, all we need to continue to the next step, which will be the building the sounds. So as I said, we do this through iterations, right? So we come with a very kind of a rough kind of prototype. It's not a prototype, it's very polished, but it could be used like a prototype to understand how it works on screen, if it works, if it doesn't, if it's coherence, if it's not. And we do this through a series of iterations. It depends on the client. It depends on the strategy that we're going to do. But that's kind of how the process works. After the brief, we build the sounds. And something that is crucial for us when we're doing this for brands or products, and we're going to see how this is important for you when doing it in a film, is when the process really has to focus on these four key parameters, which is brand fit, appeal, coherence, and recall. So when we're talking about brand fit, right? So does the music, does the audio, does it align with the identity, with the story, with the vision? Like, is it a premium brand or is it a premium product? Does it sound generic? Because that really affects the perception, right? So if it's something that sounds cheap, it's probably perceived as cheap. When we're talking about appeal, right? So does the style of audio, does it resonate with the target audience? So if we're using a hip hop track or an urban or reggaeton track for a scary movie, or for I don't know, for a tech brand, perhaps there's not a lot of appeal there for the audience. Coherence, right? So is it consistent across channels, platforms, and touch points? Are we using the same sonic universe on every touch point of a product or a brand, right? And finally, the recall. So is this something that's memorable? Is it distinctive? That's why it's so important for us to go into what other people or competitors or whatnots are doing or did, because through audio you can really differentiate, and talking about strategically, you can really position yourself um, wiser. So, as I said, right? So when we're talking about strategic approach in branding, this is not film at the moment. This is branding. This is actually what we're looking for: the brand fit, the alignment, right? The coherence, the consistency, the appeal. Is it resonates with people? And the recall. Is it memorable? Is it distinctive, or is it forgettable? Is it something that it's trendy and is going to go away in a couple weeks? I want to bring you a couple of case studies before we delve into the film, just for you to see in practice what I'm talking about, right? So first of all, Arla, this is a Danish brand that we've worked here at Sonic Minds. I brought this example because they were looking for something. It's a Danish, it's Nordic. So we're talking about something that's very culturally ingrained, something that is very enrooted in the Nordic style, right? So in this example, after the whole brief, after all the process that I illustrated to you, we came up with this theme song, right? That it has this Nordic elements, the music style, the cloning, and yeah, I just wanted to show you how this sounds, especially since it's a brand, it's an ad, of course, but it tells a story. So in the end, storytelling, whether it's film, whether it's a brand, whether a product, it's everything.
Sound can strengthen a brand in ways that words and images can't. Evoking an emotion, changing a perception, an expression of our DNA. We took inspiration from Scandinavia and the people who inhabit it. Here, we found strong ties to a unique herding call called kulning, traditionally sung by female herders. This ancient Scandinavian singing style was used across long distances to call the cows home. Taking this as our inspiration, we have crafted a sound which will become unmistakably Arla. Powerful, beautiful, pure in its tone, projecting inner strength.
You are muted, Jorge.
Sorry. So what what's something that's really interesting here also is the voice, right? So it's not only music, it's not only sound, it's also the voice, that the voice of the brand, right? So I brought this example because I thought it was very interesting how we can distill this 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 essence, this core values into music in a very concrete and in this case a very commercial way. I brought this other example. It's a little bit closer to storytelling in like an entertainment way or educational ways, and this is the universe of games, right? So this is a game we worked for. We worked for Dark Zone, the developers. It's called 4 a.m. right? So this is interesting because from the brief we had to strike this delicate balance, right? So the goal was to enhance the narrative, enhance the story, while dealing with the agency and the immersion of the experience, right, for the players, and it's something that it's different when we're dealing with interactive audio, such as game, that changes whenever you're going, changes what it would do according to the action. So, like, in the end, there was this soundscape that we came up with. We're highlighting the dark, we're highlighting the tense. There was a ton of the themes that might sound a little bit unsettling, but it really gave really brought life to the game. I'm going to show you a little bit of how this sounds after the whole brief and whatnot. Okay, so it's a different beast from Arla, right? It's a very different industry, very different niche, but the goal was attained, right? So we were going into how can we attain this balance? How can we enhance the gameplay? How can we enhance the story while keeping the player engaged, while keeping him attentive? So there's a lot of psychology going on there, and I think that it's a very interesting example as well. And finally, but not least important, of course, Girona Film Festival. So that's where we are right now. We did the audio logo for Girona Film Festival, and it was a very interesting, it was a very interesting experience, since it's something like we have to evoke something so culturally rooted and heavy as it, like Girona Film Festival, with all it's the time that's been going on, the experience, the reach that it has, and how can we give an identity to a film festival, right? That was the initial question, and what we eventually came up with was with this audio logo. I'm going to play with you in a bit. Just like quick shout out to our team, Vicente, Joaquin, and John. They were the ones that they worked with here. Joaquin was the one that came up with the concept. Vicente was leading the whole process, and John did all the mixing, mastering for us, which was amazing. The Sonic logo, and actually we want animators to jump in and animate this Sonic logo. So throughout the festival, if you guys know anyone, if you want to jump in, please reach out. It would be amazing. And this is the audio logo for Girona Film Festival. Check it out. Beautiful. So, like, it's time to try to understand everything we've talked about, like the whole brief, the whole concept, the workshops. We're trying to extract the values. We're trying to extract the key attributes of a brand, of a product, of a project, of the vision, right? So this is an example of how it can materialize in sound, right? Something that we're all here, we know we're enjoying the festival so far, and you know, seeing how it sounds, actually hearing how it sounds, it's really something else. Okay, so so far we've talked about you know, the what is really auto branding, and you know, how it works on the backstage. Now I want to translate this into film, right? So how can we take some of the principles, some of the frameworks here, and apply them to film, music, and sound? So first of all, if we're going to talk about audio branding, which is a strategy, then we have to see our productions, whether it's a film, whether it's a short, whatever it is that we're producing, we have to see it through the strategy lens. So first question, right? How early do you define your sound direction compared to your visual direction? So as directors, as people that think visually first, we might define the storyboard, we might define locations, we might even define like the tone, the tonalities, the colors, the filters, the lenses that we're going to be using. But maybe sound is not taken into account at the first sight. Maybe it's something that comes after. So like first thing, if we're going to treat sound strategically inside film productions and whatnot, is we have to have this sound direction. We have to have this vision defined at first sight. As we do with the visuals, we have to do with the sound as well. So just a provocative question as well. And okay, why do we want to treat the story like a brand? Right? We're talking about audio branding, and of course, as I said, you know, we're not talking specifically about like we're trying to sell a brand. We're talking here about the experience, right? The perception of the experience, the thing that lasts after that first impression, right? So why do we want to treat a story, a film, a vision, an idea like a brand? Well, now, as we saw before, the strategic approach to audio in brand, when we're talking about the brand fit, the coherence, the recall, now we're going to talk about the strategic approach to audio in film, right? So probably instead of brand fit, we're talking about message fit. So how well does the audio reflect the story's identity and the thematic world that's being illustrated, right? So we're not talking about brand, we're talking about the world, the universe that we're trying to convey through our visuals, through our idea, through our directive decisions. So how does sound play a role in this? When we're talking about coherence, right? So this is kind of the same thing. How are we consistent among all the narrative outputs? So we're not talking about only the film, we're talking about other experiences around the film, right? So maybe trailers, maybe any digital content. So how does sound play a role in this? Which I personally think it's one of the most important things one can do in film. The appeal, right? So how is this soundscape? How are the creative, the musical decisions appealing to the target audience of this film, right? So if we're creating a children's film, we're probably not going to use like adult profile-y instruments or musicality. We're going to use something more childish. Or if we're going to talking about cartoon, or we're talking about documentary, we're talking about, like, you know, you get the idea. And finally, the recall and the distinctiveness, sorry. So here we're talking about the likelihood that the sound is going to stick. Sound is going to contribute to this long-term recognition, right? And here, creativity is key, because you can have all this information, all this data, and you can decide to do something that in the end, it might be a little bit obvious. It might be forgettable, right? You can have the best brief in the world, but if you don't execute it in a way that brings this distinctiveness, bring this different elements that people might miss, or people might think that's not necessarily relevant, or that has something to do with it, and explore them in different and exciting ways, right? And this little tool here, it's where we're going to direct, or what we're going to do to define the sonic DNA of a film. So just as we do with a brand, a product, right? We define the sonic DNA. We do the same thing with film. So this is like this enables us to discuss and evaluate our decisions regarding sound and music based really on data, right? We can talk about this key attributes, and we're gonna define how they sound, how the opposing spectrums sound, which is very important. We're gonna see in a little bit. So this method through the key attributes is, as I said, it eliminates practically, it pretty much eliminates the subjectiveness. Like it really grounds the process, right? We're not talking about personal taste anymore. We're not talking if we like it or if we not like it. What we're trying to answer here is, does it fit? Does it make sense? Does it help? Does it enhance the narrative? Or does it destroy it? Or does it, is it an obstacle for it to happen? What we want in the end is for that. We want to create a meaningful, emotionally associative experience from the audience with our story, with our vision, with what we want to tell through the visuals, right? And we talked briefly about the steps and the process of how we work with it in brands. And I want to translate it a little bit into film just to give you guys a little bit more of a framework, something you can use really. So the process in film would be, first of all, you have your film concept, you have your idea, right? You have your vision of what you want to do, what you want to convey, what you want to transmit. And this is where we start with the brief, right? We create the brief, we create the sound, the concept, the audio concept, right? Which is based on this concept as a foundation. So we do all those workshops that we mentioned. We do the research. We do the who is going to be seeing the audience, right? Who's going to be watching this? Who's going to be consuming this? Who do we want to reach? Who do we want to touch, right? In the sense, who do we want to change a perception or an idea, or how do we want to convey what we think? The mood as well, right? So which moods are we going to explore to achieve this? Afterwards, we have the brief of the film. How is it going to play out? The music for the music of the film, the sound effects, the voice, even narration if it's necessary, and then we go to the step number 2, right? The production phase. This is where the sonic identity starts to take place. So in brand, this is where we do the audio logos, brand music, variations. In film, this is where we come up with the main theme, right? So we already chose the instruments, we already chose the tonality, the textures that we're looking for, the oppositions, musically speaking, and that way we can come up with the main theme of what could become the main theme of film, right? Afterwards, we can distill the variations of this. So that happens a lot in film, right? You have this main theme, and what we do, you create variations throughout the film to maintain the identity, but play with moods, perhaps. And the sound effects and voice as well. That's something that comes afterwards. In movies, it sometimes it tends to be like the sound effects and the Foley department works separately from the music department, and that's something that should not happen. Everybody should. The sound, video, music director has to be in charge to really maintain cohesion. There's a lot of people working, especially in big productions, so it's important to have somebody that really keeps the cohesion. And what works to do that is to follow these steps, right? From the main theme or from the audio logo, if you may, we can come up with the sound effects that we're going to be using on the film, especially if we need like special color of them, of the sound effects, if they're not just Foley for being Foley for the sake of Foley. And finally, really the implementation, right? So this is where we iterate, this is where we audition, this is where we put on screen, we start to evaluate how it works, or if it not works, and do the necessary changes with the director and the crew. Okay, so no more, enough theory. We're almost closing to the end, and I wanted to do this really quick workshop. Unfortunately, we cannot do this interactively, but I would like to suggest you to like keep following me, and get into the spirit here, because it's going to be very interesting for us to define this sonic DNA of a story. So we're going to get a fictional story at the moment, right? So this is an idea that whatever idea that came up, maybe a filmmaker is taking a shower and okay, I have this idea of the lighthouse, the last lighthouse, right? So this example, the idea of this film would be Elena. She's a retired lighthouse keeper, and she's returning to her isolated post one final time before it is automated. So it's something that perhaps nostalgia, perhaps memories. You know, over 3 days of quiet rituals, she confronts memories of her late husband lost at sea. As the storm approaches and breaks through her emotional barriers, the lighthouse beam cuts through the chaos one last time. And something that, like, we're talking here in this example, a little bit of already some evoking some sounds, right? So instruments, mechanisms, winding, so some things start to come to life. And finally, words from the director, for example. So he wants it, or she wants it to feel slow, contemplative, and intimate. So he or she wants it to be a meditation on solitude, the weight of time, and letting go of the rituals we cling to. So this could be like, it's not a brief, it's an idea. This is how we start, okay? So we're talking about film, right? So we have the idea, and now we're going to go inside and do some insights, do some research, take out some insights. So for example, what emotional keywords from the example that we just showed? So weight, solitude, quiet, reverence, comfort, pain, letting go, peace, some emotional keywords that we can conclude from the initial idea. Then the sonic textures that are implied, right? So not only the mechanisms and whatnot that we talked, but some others that are between the lines, like ocean, we're talking about a lighthouse, wind, footsteps, the weather, maybe a storm as well, simplicity, right? Next, the pacing and the rhythm of this film, of this idea. How do we want people to perceive it? How do we want people to navigate it, right? So in this case, we're probably looking for something slow, ritualistic, repetitive, perhaps. We're trying to building to release this whole thing to really enhance the narrative. We're talking about tonal qualities, right? So according to that first idea, what things can we infer from the tonal quality? So you're looking for something maybe intimate, maybe melancholic, right? Do we want something that it's hopeful resolution, or something that it's more like regret? You know, the tonal qualities, not talking musical here, right? Talking about the tonal qualities of the story. What do we want to explore? And finally, audience, for example. So this is an example. So we can be targeting people that are, that go to art film festivals, right? Maybe between 30 and 60. They like a slow cinema. Perhaps these are people that have experienced loss or major life transitions. So we're seeking for them to really identify themselves with a character, with a section of the story. Or maybe this is an audience that is looking for meditative experiences, maybe not necessarily entertainment per se. So you get where this is going. We're starting to take these keywords from this idea. That's the first thing that we're going to do. We're gaining these insights. We're doing the research, and we're getting the insights. The second step is, as I showed before, the attribute spectrum, right? So this step is key. What we're going to do here, through these workshops, we're going to define, but not only define the key attributes, we're going to map them across each other. I know that sounds complex, but bear with me. What I mean here is we're trying to lose subjectiveness. We're trying to ground this a little bit more. So instead of like opposing only like the obvious, right? So for example, we're looking for something contemplative, and we can oppose that to something frenetic, which in a way you can say it's easy. But if we're looking for something contemplative or meditative, on what spectrum of that it's located? How am I going to tell my composer or my sound design guy I need something contemplative? There's no frame of reference, right? So that's the key here. As I say here in the end, it's not about taste. It is about coherence and fit. What we're trying to ask here is not, we want something contemplative or frantic. We're actually trying to fit how much contemplative are we talking about? How much or what aesthetic of mechanical are we talking about? So 3 quick examples here to illustrate what I'm saying about contraposing these attributes that we extracted from this insights, right? So from all of this, we came up with this 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 opposing forces that may permeate a project. Just as when we talk about brands like Apple, like what are their core values? It's innovation, thinking differently, et cetera, et cetera. These are kind of like the core values of the project, right? So for example, the contemplative, the temporal weight, as we mentioned in the idea, the mechanical ritualism of the lighthouse, which opposes to an organic spontaneity that might happen in nature, for example. So now let's go to the examples to illustrate why exactly I mean with this. So let's first for this meditative contemplative example. So that's what I mean. You're right. We're talking about contemplative, but there's a spectrum of it, right? We can, for someone, something meditative could be something very zen, something like a drone going on, like a bed of sound. For another person, something meditative might be like a jazz piano, something a little bit more soft, something that evokes maybe you're sitting down with a cup of coffee thinking about life. So that's why it's important to play within the same key attribute, but with opposing forces to start grounding the concepts instead of being so subjective. Another example, because it might not be only musical, it can be sound effects, for example, here in the mechanical. So this is a little bit of an exaggerated example, right? Because one, it's the mechanical sounds of a printer, the other mechanical sounds of gears and clocks and whatnot. But just to illustrate, right, mechanical can mean so many things for different people. So it's very important to play with these sounds, to bring them to your composer, or if in case you're a composer, to bring them to your director to try to really define what you're looking for. Finally, when we talked about contemplative meditative, it's something maybe like a state, right? Mechanical, which is something external, and melancholy, which is like a feeling, right? So how can we translate this to a feeling, for example? So as the same thing with the other examples, it's different. You can see melancholy, sorry, through the eyes of a piano, a sad piano, or you can see it through the eyes of, well, in this case, melancholy Hilbert gorillas, right? But like something that evokes childhood, something that evokes a distant memory or whatnot. So that's why it's so important to really put this spectrum to work inside the key attributes, right? To really see what works. And in the end, after you went through, you got the idea, then you did the research, the strategic research, you got the insights, pretty much like words and feelings and pretty much words, right? Then you get those words and you package them, or you group them or categorize them in this key attributes, right? And what you do is you put them to test to see how much or how less of this representation of this attribute sonically we want. And finally, after we have we did this opposing of the spectrum of the attributes, what we're going to do is finally we have this little graphic here, which, as I said, as I showed before with the example of the brand, it gives us a map, a visual representation of how much of each key attribute we want, or we desire, or we see in the sonic DNA of this project or this film. So for example, here we see a lot of contemplative. We see not so much intimate vastness or melancholic resolution. We see a lot of mechanical ritualism, for example. So how much of the key attributes, after we saw which essence of the key attribute we want, and after we have this map, we can put the references here. So this is cool if you want to send it, for example, to your composer or to your sound designer. So you can say, okay, we want a lot of contemplative, and the reference would be number 1, right? So for example, the reference would be the Zen meditative piece. So we're going to put it here. So we want a lot of this. So regarding temporal weight, we want medium, and it could be a Spotify link, right? You don't have to be the wave. It can be a Spotify. It could be a YouTube. So for the intimate vastness, we don't want a lot of it, but just a little bit. And what I'm talking about is this reference, right? So this can be a very, very valuable map for whoever is going to be assisting you, or even if you're taking the lead and understanding a little bit better and being more intentional with sound and music in your product and project. Okay, we're coming up to the end, and finally, you have the key attributes, you have the sonic, the production, you did it, right? You according to this map, you have the sonic identity, you have the sonic DNA, if you may. Finally, the thing is going to be to build the narrative, right? So we're going to take the main theme, we're going to take what inside this main theme can represent a character, what can represent a mood, what can represent anything, right? And we're going to follow the principle of coherence, especially when we're talking about film, right? So in this context, when we're talking about coherence, it means that all music, all sound effects, everything sonically that comes out, voice as well, it all derives from the same core DNA, right? That's why if you hear the to-doom of a Netflix with a xylophone, it's not going to sound the same, right? So it has to be the same core DNA in order to really be effective and really achieve all of this connection, all this association that we would like to achieve through the thinking strategically of sonic and music inside our film projects. Okay, so that would be the end of the presentation. I was, before closing, just hoping to see if anyone has any questions regarding this process, or any comments you would like to do. If not, it's okay. This is my contact information. Please reach out to me. Please reach out on Instagram. Please reach out on email, LinkedIn. We're here to really bring and offer this new perspective on what sound and music treated strategically can do for any audiovisual endeavor, whether it's a brand, whether it's a product, whether it's a campaign, whether it's a film, whatever it is that you want to build this connection with people, that you want to create these associations and make people, like, after watching your product, after seeing your film, be like, this was mind-blowing. And in the end, that sound had a lot of to take place in that. So if I may just leave you with anything in the end, it would be with this sentence. I love it. It's kind of our philosophy here at Sonic Minds, which is that when we break the silence, it must create more meaning than the silence itself, right? We live in a chaotic world. We live in a noisy world. So if we don't do that, if we don't create meaning, if we're not going to break the silence, we have to create meaning, because otherwise it's just noise, and the world's noisy enough. So those who see the opportunities and those who see sound as it is, this amazing tool of communication, those are the ones that are creating meaning in the end, and are battling this noise that surrounds us at any time. So again, thank you very much for your time. My name is Jorge, again, from Sonic Minds. Please reach out to us, connect. We'll be very glad to help you, to assist you, to guide you. And I hope you continue to enjoy the Hirona Film Festival. We're very glad to be part of this story, creating the audio logo, and giving our a little grain of sand to this amazing project of Mr. Luis Valenti and all the team. So again, thank you very much. Please reach out, and hopefully we'll be talking soon.